These are the Mechanix brand gloves that I use for sim racing for over 2 years. These are the Sparco Hypergrip gaming gloves that I used to replace them at the beginning of this year. And these are the updated versions of those same gloves that I bought to replace the previous ones about 2 months ago. And which one of those should you buy if you're a sim racer? Well, the answer might surprise you. Now, I used to be firmly planted into the camp of no sim racing with gloves on, mainly because I just didn't see a need for it in sim racing. Real race car drivers wear gloves primarily to maintain their grip over long racing sessions inside of a heated cabin, and as a safety precaution, if the car caught on fire, they would need a way to protect their extremities. Obviously, you don't need those things in a sim rig. I mean, if your sim rig's catching on fire, you have bigger problems to worry about. But I noticed that over time, as I started to upgrade my gear during longer sessions, my grip would indeed falter late in those sessions. So I decided to try some gloves. Also, I had upgraded to the Thrustmaster Alcantara Ferrari wheel, and I wanted to protect that covering, although Fanatec says that gloves are actually bad for it. I'll let you guys debate that out. And the gloves that I chose were simply a pair of Mechanix gloves that you can get down at your local auto parts store for about 20 bucks. And these served me pretty well until I upgraded to a direct drive wheel sometime last year. And one thing I noticed is that it was wearing those gloves out a lot. I noticed that as I drove cars with heavier steering and more downforce, that the gloves tended to slip a little bit, sometimes, especially with spikes in force feedback or whenever there was clipping. So I thought to myself, well, I need a new set of gloves. Now, I didn't want to go full race gear gloves because I felt that would be kind of ridiculous. So I looked at the Sparco Hypergrip series. And while they were okay, they did the job. There was a few shortcomings that I'll go over in a bit. And when I discovered that there was an updated version of those gloves, I decided to go ahead and buy those. And those are the gloves that I currently race with. So now the question is, well, was it worth it to buy these gloves? Considering that the first edition Hypergrips were $30 and the second edition was an extra $40 on top of that. Was it a good purchase? Now I'm going to talk about the first edition Hypergrips and the second edition kind of at the same time because they're very similar, and just talk about what some of the differences are in both of those gloves and the pros and the cons. The first edition Hypergrips have a very sleek look. I like the black faux suede leather with the red stitching in it. It looks very, very sharp. In the back of the glove, at least the finger and knuckles area, is actually mesh, breathable mesh. It's actually real nice in a long session when your hands would normally get hot. It keeps them from getting sweaty. Also, the index finger folds back, and so that those of you that use a touch keyboard, like a lot of people in sim racing do, and you can have the ability to use that finger. Also, the gloves fit very, very nicely. Now, these are size 9. My hands aren't very big. My fingers are long, but they're very skinny and slender. And a size 9 fits, well, like a glove. They have a nice little Velcro strap on the back to keep it secure. And it's a really good feeling glove. Once you put it on, actually, you barely even notice that it's there once you start racing. It's got 2 pads in the palm of the hand that are right about where the palm of your hand would contact your wheels. So for those of you that like to grip the wheel really tightly, these would be great for you as they help alleviate some of that discomfort you get from grabbing the wheel so tightly. However, the gloves themselves aren't really all that grippy. Even though they're called Hypergrips, in the context of sim racing, they're not really any grippier than my old Mechanix gloves were. The 2 pads on the palm actually do have some small raised material to help with gripping the wheel, but it doesn't really feel like it's doing much of anything. Also, on the heel of your hand, there's some slight rubbery material, but that doesn't really seem to do anything either. The fingers are smooth fake leather, and it feels about like my old Mechanix gloves did, except these tend to fit better. So needless to say, I was a little bit disappointed in these gloves considering that I spent $30 on them. Now, they do come in a neat little pouch that Sparco sends you. Maybe that tacks on an extra $5 to the cost of the gloves. I throw this in a drawer and I really don't see any reason to use it, but it is kind of nice if you want to keep your gloves in a nice case, I guess. And having said that, after a while, I was really just using these gloves just because I spent the money on them. But I'd figure, well, when these worn out, I'm just gonna go back to my Mechanix gloves, or maybe look into actually buying a set of real race gloves. But Actually, when I saw that Sparco had updated these gloves, I decided to buy them sight unseen, because I figured if they had made improvements on a glove that I really liked, but I just felt like it wasn't totally worth the $30, then surely an upgraded version would be worth $30. And I was wrong about one thing. The upgraded version wasn't $30. It was actually $40. But there's a clear improvement in these gloves over the old style Hypergrips. They also come with the glove case from Sparco Gaming. And the first thing you notice about these gloves is that there's a lot more grippy surfaces on the actual heel of the hand. This rubbery material actually does a great job of maintaining grip on the wheel. It's a night and day difference. Also on the fingertips here, there's that same material. And this glove actually has an extra padded area in the upper palm area to better contact the entire length of where your hand would be gripping a wheel. The pads themselves actually feel a little bit firmer. Now, the fingertips are not removable like on the old style Hypergrips. However, I don't think that was really a necessary feature at all. In the fingertip area is thin enough to where you can still work a touchpad if you need to. And on this version of the gloves, the entire back is covered in that mesh material to really increase the airflow that you would get to your hands. When you are driving these gloves, your hands never really get hot. One caveat, however, and this was kind of confusing, is that they removed the Velcro straps from around the bottom of the gloves. So these gloves are a lot harder to get on if you get them in your size. Now, I've had these gloves almost 3 months now, and I figured that from taking them on and off, eventually it would get easier to put on, but I don't find that that's the case. And it's kind of a bummer too that it's so hard to get them on and off, considering the last edition gloves, the strap, you could get them on and off in a matter of a couple of seconds. So if you do get the upgraded version, you might want to go a size higher. However, I will say that these are size 9, like these are size 9, and these fit my hands perfectly. So if you do decide to get these gloves and go a size up, you may not get the same level of fit or feel that you would normally get, and it could really compromise what you think about the glove. So is this glove worth $40? Yeah, I'd say so. In a sim racing context, it is. It's slightly cheaper than an actual Sparco racing glove is, and you can tell that Sparco really put a lot of work into the second edition of these gloves. The first edition in these gloves honestly feel like they were designed for gaming in general. If you are a person that plays a lot of console games and you grip a controller for long periods of time, these gloves actually are great for that. For sim racing, and not quite so much. I think your $30 could be best spent elsewhere. The second edition Hypergrips are a lot more tailored towards sim racing, and it feels more like how I expect a glove from Sparco to feel. So now, the $40 question, are they better than these? Well, I'll say this. They are better gloves. There's no doubt that these, in the context of sim racing, are better than these Mechanix gloves that you can find just about anywhere. However, these were $19.99. They might have been even cheaper than that. They may have paid $10 for them, whereas these are at the very least twice as much. And I would say that for the value, these are probably a better buy for your average sim racer. I think most people are not going to be running high force feedback or high enough force feedback to where they really need that extra amount of grip. And I think if you want to wear gloves, then something like this is probably your best bet. These have been regulated to being normal Mechanix gloves for other duties since I've got the Sparcos. However, these served me very, very well for a very long time. Now, another question is, these lasted for 2 years. How long will these last? And unfortunately, there's no way I'm going to know that. But they seem fairly durable. These, in about 6 months of use, seem to hold up fairly well. There's some fraying around the fingertips of the mesh material on the old Hypergrip gloves. That could be of some concern, but not too much. So if you're in the market for sim racing gloves and $40 is about your budget, you should take a serious look at the second edition Sparco Hypergrips. I would say sim racers should avoid the first edition Hypergrips. They're a little bit easier to find. These I had to get directly from Sparco, whereas the first edition, there are a lot of different retailers on the internet that sell those particular gloves. However, for everybody else, if you just want a pair of gloves to wear while you're driving, I really think that Mechanix brand or any other kind of basic faux leather Mechanix gloves will be just fine for you. So if you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. Go down to the comments, tell me what you think about these gloves or what you think about this channel or me or sim racing or whatever, and I'll be sure to provide you guys with more of the sim racing content that you want to see. Thanks.